Hello, welcome to Model Kit Stuff and welcome to another First Impressions video. Today we focus on ICM's Leyland Retriever. What a gorgeous truck. So, ICM's 1:35 scale Leyland Retriever General Service, early production version of the truck that saw all sorts of service during the Second World War with the British and Commonwealth Armies. So this is a 6x4 truck built by Leyland Motors in Leyland, Lancashire in the United Kingdom, and it came in a variety of different bodies, as you can imagine. Probably the most famous version is the one used by Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery as his caravan vehicle, which you can now go and see in the War Museum at Duxford. So I've seen a couple of these up close in the original guises in Malta and in the UK, so I know they were used all over the place. So ICM have got a truck here with lots and lots of potential. There's been many different models of this vehicle over the years, but this is a 2021 new tool, and as such I'm expecting big things. So let's go and have a look. So as we look at the box, we've got a kit number of 35602, and we've got a lovely image generated there, which appears to be somewhere in Northern Europe. And we've got an empty truck there, which I'm guessing is depicting how it's modelled with cab cover but not a back cover. It tells us that it's 14 plus, and as we go around the edges are the same as the top, and then on this side we get some profile images of the truck. And as per usual, because it's ICM, we get a really nice sturdy top opening box with a separate lid. Inside our box is a single bag full of parts. Then we have our instruction manual, our decals, and our little leaflet about customer service. So looking at our instruction manual, and we have a nice colour stapled A4 manual in portrait orientation. We have a little bit of history, and then we have some information about the truck, technical specifications of the truck. It tells us we've got a Leyland 4-cylinder 5.9 73 horsepower engine. I believe it was an overhead cam as well. And then as we look at our paint call outs, strangely they're calling out Tamiya and Revell. Oh, that's a very strange paint system to call out. I would say that Revell's probably the least used paint system within the hobby. So interesting that they've shouted Revell out and not Humbrol or even Vallejo or someone like that. Yeah, very unusual. So I don't know whether Revell approached them and say, would you list our paint colours? I don't know how that works, but yeah, odd that they've given Revell references. Anyway, we do have the paint names as well, so you can go and easily source your own colours in there. Not too many colours being used at all. Then we have our reference key for the instructions, and then we have a caution note there and contact details for the company. As we turn over the page, we've got our sprue map, and all the parts have their numbers on as they are on the sprue, so you can actually use it as a cross-reference of parts. Shows us that we're going to get some clear parts there. the windscreen's not being used, and therefore subsequently we're not using the windscreen wiper either. Tells us we've got 7 tyres. I'm going to guess they're vinyl. In fact, I can see them from here, so they are. And a piece of photo etch that just covers the grille. But that's an improvement on some other kits that have been recently released. Okay, let's take a look over the page. More sprues. There's quite a few sprues involved, and we start step 1 with the building of the chassis frame, and we can see the suspension, leaf spring suspension going in, and some other bits and pieces to allow us to bring that together. As always, a lot of detail going in right from the off with the ICM kits. As I turn over the page, we can see we're extending those parts. What they do is the part count increases because they put more detail in. So rather than trying to mold that as one piece and it not fitting, they've done it separately so you get more detail. So if you want to show the truck on its side or something like that, you've got everything you need underneath to be seen is there. Then we're building what looks like the tow hook, putting that in place, some other bits and pieces, and then step 11 we've got an engine block going together. So we have got an engine, that's really nice. We can see that being built up. Number of different parts, separate hoses, so that should look really quite detailed, and if you can do some research and get your colours, that should really look nice. You can see that some colours are being shouted out, so that's black for example, throughout the build, but it's always worth cross-referencing, because if they've copied one from a museum and that's been painted incorrectly, you're going to paint incorrectly. Depends on how much accuracy you're trying to achieve, I guess. So being connected to the transmission, then we've got the fan going on, some more hose pipes, exhaust being put together, or at least part of the exhaust, and then that all gets put into place. The exhaust goes on top. Not quite sure what it's. I think that's where the exhaust meets. I think they're just highlighting that point there. And then we've got the rear suspension being assembled, and more parts going in. It looks quite busy already, doesn't it? 33 steps already. Then we're putting even more parts going in. Then we're building up the wheel assembly and the axles there. Again, they look nice and detailed, and that's just the back of the hubs going on. Once they're on, we've got more little parts going on, and we've got something that looks really busy and accurate already. Okay, so 6 lots of wheels going on. So it looks like we're building up hubs which go into the tyres, and then they connect onto those hubs at the front, whereas at the back we've got a back and front hub that make the connection directly onto their shafts there. Okay, then that would be the spare wheel, and look at how complex the assembly is for the spare wheel, which is going behind the engine there. So yeah, interesting. So it has a flat front, so the cab is sitting on top of the engine. Then we are building what looks to be the inside cab wall, so this must be the front of the vehicle. We've got our little dashboard there. First dip of our little dashboard there. We're starting to put some decals on, individual decals for the dials, which is nice, rather than coating the whole thing in decal film. Then we've got what's probably fuse boxes and bits going on. I'll be interested to see how well the little tarpaulin doors have been moulded when we look at the parts. Separate pedals, gear and handbrake, and then that's 2 different floor panels that are going in either side of the engine. Steering wheel going in, looks like that's got a nice nice shape to it with all the little finger grips in, which again, recent releases of trucks from other brands haven't had those in where they should have been. So nice level of detail. Putting the little handles onto the sides there that go over the. Do we call it a bonnet when it's not sticking out the front? No, I'm not sure, but it's the engine covers effectively. I wonder if clearly these probably fold up, do they, rather than come off, or maybe they do both. Be interested to see whether we could have that open and show what that looks like when it's open, so you can see into the engine. I think that would be a nice way of modelling this. Depends on what we're going to do with it. Probably going to be standalone rather than in a diorama, this one, I think, but can't be guaranteeing that. Then this looks like possibly seats, wooden storage that makes a seat, maybe, don't know. It looks like there's some form of latch though on it, and they do look like wood slats. So yeah, they're going in where I'd expect the seats, so I'm guessing that is the seat positions. Wow, that's a little basic, isn't it? I hope they put a cushion on it. And then we've got some form of seat back going onto this back bulkhead there. So again, whether that's just type material to offer some very basic support. I mean, this is a very basic vehicle in that way, isn't it? But yeah, basically you're riding on a church pew. Blimey, that is going to be uncomfortable on rough ground. Then we've got the little side walls there, and we're attaching our shovel, which seems to be moulded with all the clips and things already on. Then we've got our front mudguards going in underneath, and then we've built up the cab. That is proper basic, isn't it? And it flops right on top of the engine, so you can almost see how Leyland go from this cab construction to that tilted forward, that revolutionized truck design globally, where you can have the engine underneath and you tilt the cab forward, which is now universally done by everybody. Right, radiator, and the radiator goes straight onto the grille because it's basically proud of the front bulkhead. So it's not really moved on in terms of design from very early truck design, but what it is doing is it's maximizing the space. So you've not got a huge amount of space being taken up by the engine. You're using less materials, so it's cheaper to make. So as this went into production in 1939, they were absolutely looking at how they make this quickly and cheaply, and yeah, I think it's probably a really good design. Looks like we might have some photo etch parts that go on there, like the Leyland logo, for example. So that's quite a busy little radiator, isn't it? That will look really nice when built up. Back to underneath now, so clearly we need the cab on before this can be done. We've got the rest of the exhaust, and I'm not quite sure what that is. Looks like it's perhaps the support brackets for the back of the mudguards, which goes across there. Then we've got our, where we're going, 77 fuel tank being built up. So 2 halves, ends and mounting brackets. Step 79, and we still haven't really finished at the front end. Fuel tank going in, so mounts there right near the engine, next to the spare wheel there. And then we're starting to build up the flatbed cab at the back there. Then we're starting to build up the flatbed truck body. So nice to see we've got some extra details on there so they can keep the moulding crisp and detailed. That looks really good. Looks like seats going in. There's so many different bodies they could do with this in the fullness of time. I'm sure we're going to see lots of iterations of this. But from 83 to 93, we're building up that back. So part count isn't too high, but they've done enough separate parts to keep the detail good. So it's probably a nice balance. Then as we flip over 94, we've got storage boxes and the like going underneath. Then we've got the mud guards going on. And then the whole body goes in at step 97. Then we've got, it look like some form of shelf, running board type affair that's being mounted onto the chassis there. Probably gives you some options for then stowing tarpaulins and tools and bits and pieces. No doubt they would have utilised the space. Then we are building up the roof. Now I think we might have some clear parts going in there. Be interested to see how that works and how thick this plastic is. There's part of me wanting to replace that with painted tissue, which would look a lot more realistic in scale, but depends on the fittings. You can certainly see they've tried to thin things out and taper the edges, so we'll have to have a look at that. So there's a little shelf thing that goes on the front there. I'm not quite sure what that's for. Putting the flask on when they stop, I don't know. Headlamps going on, made up of 3 parts. We've got clear lenses. Then we've got extra driving lamps or indicators, not quite sure what they'd be. And we've got the starting handle. And then in step 111, we're putting in these 4 plastic frames that go on the outside. So you've then got the loops, so you can leave it with just the loops. No doubt the loops would get stowed into some position at the front here if they're not in use, or we can tarpaulin it with a bit of research and understand what that would look like. And step 112, we add some rigidity with the top bars going on. So you'll end up with something that looks really quite nice. Then interestingly, in step 113, we're scratch building 2 support posts. That seems a little odd. Why wouldn't they put them in? Maybe it was an afterthought. And that's your completed model, so 113 steps. We appear to have 2 decal options, but 1 paint scheme effectively. So standard olive drab colour, and then 2 different decal schemes. It tells us that is early production, but Europe 45, and early production Europe 44. So yeah, you just take your pick. There might be some aftermarket stuff out there already, I don't know. But certainly you can get resin wheels for this, and there is a crane conversion available for it as well. But I've not looked into whether I can get photo etch or anything like that for it. So looking at the decals now, little sheet of decals here. ICM decals are usually pretty good, fairly thin, and these are no different. Everything seems to be sharp and nicely done. If you look at the 9 and the 2 there, very clear, and even the dials are nice and clear, so no issues with the decals at all. All of our parts come in 1 resealable plastic bag, and then in there we've got separate plastic bags for our tyres and our clear parts. And somewhere in here we should have our photo etch, and I just want to fish that out. There we go. Right, let's look at our photo etch. Okay, so our photo etch appears to be some form of copper alloy, certainly a little bit harder than copper, and we've got on there our radiator grille, our Leyland logo, and I'm not quite sure what that says on the bottom. I've only got my reading glasses on, but it's a word, so it might actually say Retriever on it. But yeah, that's a lovely, lovely bit of photo etching. It'll look really nice once that is painted up and put in place. Really nice. Okay, sprue A first, and we've got a whole variety of parts from different parts of the build process. But on the outside, we've got our outside frames for the chassis frame, and then we've got our front part with the radiator, what looks like the back cab bulkhead, the fuel tank, another part of the radiator, spare wheel brackets, the bits for forming the cab roof, the cab floor pan, what looks like the seats, and the engine cover. So quite a few of the cab parts and our doors there, and let's have a look at those first because I'm really interested in those. So on the Airfix Katie recently, I commented on how they looked dreadful, and these actually don't look bad at all. We've got some nice rolls at the top. The strapping is nice and clear, and the creases look natural and they are different. You can see the creases are in different places, so that gives you a proper natural look, so I like that. Everything is nice and crisp and sharp and no flash. I can't see any sink or any issues. When we look at our chassis frame, there is lots of detail on there in terms of bolts. The leaf springs are well depicted. Yep, all very nice. These are our seat boxes. We've got fairly basic clip depicted on there, but it tells you exactly what it is. It's instantly recognizable. Small amount of flash on the corners there. Very, very tiny amount. But, you know, one swipe with your sanding stick and that's gone. Now I can feel creases. Let's see if we can get that up on camera. And you see there's some creases in there, and they've done it differently on that side, so it's actually going to look quite nice under paint. I think once we get a primer on it, it'll look better. And you can see they've done the same here with this back piece, and definitely with these two side pieces, which look very different, as they should do. We've got ejector pin marks on the inside, but they should fill fairly easily. It does look a bit thick, as you would expect with it being plastic, but once you put your clear panel in, it might look okay. So I'm holding judgment on what I'm doing with that, whether I'm replacing or not. If you replace it, you are going to have to think about how you do the frame, but it's all doable. Our front nose here looks really nice. We've got rivet detail on the little plate there. Very nice radiator. It's got lovely texturing as well. That'll look fantastic with the grille on. Yeah, very, very nice. Nicely detailed cap on the fuel tank there. Yeah, really nice. Let's show you these parts nice and close. Just pause the video if you want to look at things a bit more closely. Okay, sprue B. This is a nicely laid out sprue of smaller parts that all appear to be, or majority appear to be, dealing with the assembly of the chassis, and possibly we've got one or two bits for the cab, so I can see the steering wheel there, headlamps there, but I would suggest most of this is chassis and maybe some engine parts. So everything is very nice and crisply moulded. We can see the windscreen wipers, lovely, but we're not using it. That's for a later release. And look at this steering wheel. If we flip it over, you can see inside all the little finger marks there. Really nicely done. Lots of little details. Handles there are bent correctly. They look really nice and authentic. Got the lamps there, nicely depicted. Couplings look really good. Bit of a wash and they'll really pop out. Gear levers and things. Our little indicator lamps or whatever they are. And our pedals. Various bits and pieces, really nice. Let's flip her over. So we haven't got bulbs in the headlamps, but we can certainly deal with that. Can see our shovel, starter handle, fan, probably a bit chunky, but looks all right. All looks good. Sprue C, a smaller sprue, and we've got exhaust parts on there, and parts again for the engine and the chassis. You can see the engine block there. That's nicely done. Transmission and bits and pieces. Some parts for, they look like possibly the spare wheel, that. So again, absolutely no issues with that moulding. Really crisp, very, very nice. Just flip that over. Not much on the other side. Very nice though. Sprue D, we have two of these, and we've got parts for the cab, so we can see the frames there and then the rods that go over. Now some of mine are a bit bent and deformed. They're not so bad on the other one. This is probably the worst of the two. So we will have to do, we might be able to replace that with, because it is just plastic rod, might be able to replace that with some brass or something, which will infinitely be stronger. And then we've got our wheel hubs. The bolts are all nicely done, and we've got nice little recesses for all these parts. So you can probably straighten them, but I might just replace them with a bit of brass rod for strength anyway, and for ease. Sprue E, and this is the flat back parts in the main, and we can see we've got depicted recessed lines for the planking. We've got some basic handles there. You might want to look at what you do to make them a bit nicer, so whether they're wood or a raised metal loop, who knows, but a bit of research will sort that out. Then we've got the seating there, which is nicely moulded but completely blank on that one face. Whether that's correct or not, I don't know. And then we've got some wood boxes for, that's actually the running boards, isn't it? And I suspect those are supposed to be metal loops, so you can stow stuff in and strap it up. So a bit of research on that, but I think that might be leather strapping or something like that. Anyway, parts are all crisply moulded. Again, nothing wrong with that, all very nice. Then we have more parts for the back end of the vehicle, lots of detail, all these different tie down points on the side there, loads and loads of them. And we've got more of these. I don't know whether they're quite what they are. I don't remember them from the instructions. I don't think they're seat cushions. If they're seat cushions, I'd be disappointed because they're very flat and uniform, but I don't think they are. Got the back door with the hinge moulded in. Mud guards, they look all correct. A bit chunky, but as you'd imagine from plastic, but they all look good. Yeah. That's going to look really nice. A bit of wash, bit of a dry brush, do a bit of chipping, come up a treat that. Clear plastic parts now, which is sprue H, and we can see we've got our headlamp covers which have nothing inside them. I'm sure that's probably not correct. There'd be some form of reflector marking in there. Two smaller lenses for our indicator lamps, and then the two pieces that go in to the side which are shaped to go in. They are chunky, but once inside you lose that effect, so we'll probably build it up and see what we think, to be honest. And then we've got two windscreens which aren't being used on this particular kit, but they're purely to tease you about the future. But they all look nice, they're crisp, no issues with those whatsoever. Okay, and finally we have our solid rubber tyres. Now, I don't mind rubber tyres if they're done well, and these are certainly moulded nice and crisply. They look like rubber tyres, which is what we're looking for. You don't get any sidewall writing on them, and obviously you can't show them bulged and weighted or what have you. So trucks aren't really my thing. I build them occasionally if something particularly takes my fancy for whatever reason. So I don't get too wound up about rubber tyres personally. Obviously you can get resin ones. Resin ones are going to give you that extra level of detail, and they're going to give you that weighted look and might give you different treads for different purposes. But for me, as rubber tyre goes, there's nothing wrong with those at all. They look really quite nice. And once you've painted them and weathered them and covered them in mud, who's to know whether they were rubber, plastic or composite? Who knows? So there we have it. ICM's 1:35 scale Leyland Retriever General Service Early Production Kit. What is my first impressions? Well, I've got to say, I really enjoyed looking through that kit. There's a lot of detail put in, so you've got everything you'd expect there for the truck. There's a couple of omissions, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But you've got everything there to depict the truck that you see on the image. So it's not like they've shown you stuff that you don't get, with the exception of these, which in the instructions they show as a couple of rods, but on the drawing there they show as a couple of material straps. So what the truth is, I don't know. You'd have to do a little bit of research, but you always do a bit of research before you start a build, or at least I do. So I think the subject matter is great. Yes, we've got other versions of this truck out from other manufacturers over many years. A lot of them are smaller scale though. I think this is a lovely truck. I like the front flat end. I think it's very business-like. It's certainly very basic. When you do some research, you might find there's other bits and pieces missing, but you've got a good basic kit to start from. I think the moulding is very crisp. The instructions are very clear. There's no issues with the parts at all. It's ICM, so fit shouldn't be an issue. Generally isn't, although I have once or twice come up with a little bit of an issue with fitting photo etch, but in this instance you've only really got the grille to worry about, so you're not even going to have that problem. So I think it's a lovely little kit. I think they've done the soft materials really well, the canvas materials really well. What's missing is something to go over the top. Now, they could have given you a canvas alternative to that, so you could show the full top on, but it does give you the opportunity to make your own. And what I quite like doing on vehicles like this is showing it part rolled back, so you can have it hanging down and the ties hanging down. All of these would be loops, so they're all tying points for this, so you'd have to do your research and see how that went together. And I suspect those are tying points as well, and they'd shove something in there and then that would get strapped up in some way. So I don't know. Quite a bit of research needed to get to grips with this before you build it, but a lovely, lovely kit. I think ICM have done a good job. They continue to up their game, and this is no exception. You've got a full engine there, so you can mess around with how you model it, and then you've got loads and loads of options and opportunities for putting materials in the back and putting it in a diorama, or even doing what I might do with it, which is modelling what I saw outside the Maltese War Museum, where they had it parked up against the sidewall, and it was all faded paint, rusty, and generally waiting to be reconditioned and refurbished and brought back to its original state. And I might do that because been a long time since I did anything that was just a rusting barn find type model, and this I think lends itself to it really nicely, but I don't know yet. All right, if you're in the market for a Leyland Retriever, you now know what you get in the kit. I hope that was useful. Take care everyone, you enjoy your modelling, and I will see you very soon.